Welcome everyone to the next Ask Me Anything session. This one's really interesting. We've got a bit of a twist on the usual Ask Me Anythings that we have, where we've got somebody called Lorraine Woodward, who's going to talk to us about accessibility in vacation rentals. And for those of you that don't know Lorraine, I am going to read this out because rather than me stumble over a bio that I make up, I think it's far more interesting for me to read out Lorraine's bio and get it perfectly correct. So Lorraine is an entrepreneur, a business owner, and a lifelong advocate for people with disabilities. She graduated from Hendrix College in Conway, Arkansas, and after that entered the business world with enthusiasm and optimism to make a positive difference in the community. Brackets, I know that's true because I've spoken to Lorraine before, and the energy you're going to find out is huge. She created the National Barrier Awareness Foundation, which was a precursor for the Americans with Disabilities Act. With the purpose of educating communities about the attitudinal, architectural, and communicative barriers that face by individuals with disabilities and their families. There's more. Lorraine's career of 30 years has seen her at the helm of several successful startups in the communications and marketing industries, specializing in nonprofits, professional associations, and consumer products. She's earned numerous national, professional, and community service awards and recognitions, including 5 global awards, 16 national awards, 12 state awards, 1 regional award, and 15 local awards. Wow, Lorraine, but don't start. I'm gonna keep talking. In addition, she has received recognition as an Outstanding Young Woman of America Award, 2000 Notable American Women, and Media Access Awards, and has been inducted to the National Hall of Fame for Persons with Disabilities and the YWCA Academy of Women. This is a big billing, Lorraine.
Oh my goodness.
I know, isn't it great?
It is.
Yeah. I'll let you talk in a second. I just want to do the final bit though, because this is how you then relate it back to our world. So you do own accessible short-term rental properties in Carolina Beach, North Carolina, and another one in your hometown of Conway, Arkansas. Your latest venture, Becoming Rentable, is a reality TV show and social media platform dedicated to education and advocacy for accessible short-term rental properties in the United States. I would say as well beyond, because a lot of what you say doesn't just apply to people in the States. It could be taken for anybody anywhere who wants to make their home more accessible. So Lorraine, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
I tell you what, like people have heard a lot about me telling them like a bio about what you are, but tell us what your mission is. Like what is it? You know, those are great words, but like what's the mission here?
Our mission really is to change the way the short-term rental industry looks and defines what it is to mean an accessible short-term rental. And that's a mouthful in itself as well. I have muscular dystrophy. I have 2 boys with muscular dystrophy. We didn't travel that much because of accessibility issues. And so that's how I was introduced to the short-term rental industry. I ended up building a property based on our own family needs because, you know, as the boys were growing up, we didn't vacation. So as I got into the industry, I really felt stronger and stronger about how we need to provide this education to make a change.
And if I'm correct, you struggle to find an accessible property, and you told me that I can't remember how many you said that were truly accessible in this industry, but it's a staggeringly low amount.
It is. And I mean, again, we did not travel. I mean, my boys grew up not doing our summer vacations because we couldn't find anything. And part of it was there was not the Airbnb, short-term rental, VRBO craze that there is today. And so, but as they got older and they had the desire, Mom, can we go here, there? We couldn't find anything. And I mean, there are 62 million Americans that have disabilities. We can get into that a little bit later. But as we started our business and researching, we found that less than 1% of all short-term rentals are accessible. I mean, we found 23 states with 0 accessible rentals. And then as we broadened our scope, we found as we were looking at certain platforms, only 85 that were really accessible.
That's the interesting thing for me. It's like there's, you know, because 1% of the market is you want it to be higher, but it still represents a number of properties. But when you really get into it, they aren't accessible, are they? It's like there's a tick in the box to say accessible, but it's not.
It's not. And again, I go back to education. It's not because I don't know that people understand what accessibility is. Commonly when we think of accessible, we think wheelchair only. And even in wheelchair only, if you identify that box, it's like we have grab rails in a bathtub. Well, somebody like myself that's in a wheelchair can't get into those bathtubs, and so we wouldn't identify that as accessible. Or it's only 2 steps. I would love my wheelchair to climb 2 steps, but at the same token, there are properties that people go, well, we have a flight of steps, so I guess we can't be accessible. And I'm like, wait a minute, yes, you can. We're broadening the scope of what we think it means to be accessible. We have people with autism and intellectual disabilities and vision and hearing and walker. I mean, that's mobility, but it's a different level of mobility. So really, there's a broad scope that we can look at beyond wheelchair to create this accessible environment.
And to me, given what you've said, where the market has very, 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 very few places, and we're not just talking short-term rentals, I'm sure in other forms of accommodation, it's equally small, the number of truly accessible places. To me, that suggests that when you do find that place, I don't want to be so bold as to say it's life-changing, but I should imagine it has a pretty fundamental effect on being able to actually find somewhere that you can get away to, that is catered to you, that is thought about you, that allows you to really kick back and enjoy time with loved ones. Would that be the case?
Absolutely. I mean, and again, my passion for what I do stems from the experiences I see every time a renter comes to our property. I ask them, why did you travel 2.5 days from Canada to come to North Carolina? And they're like, Lorraine, there's nothing between here and there that's accessible. Last summer, we had a family that had not vacationed together in 28 years. Wow. They had a son who was blind, who was in a wheelchair, and had autism. And they have looked every senior year. They're exhausted. And lo and behold, they found our place and already coming back this year. And but 28 years they hadn't vacationed because there was nothing out there.
Yeah, that's a very good point. If people really want to talk about their bottom line, and because let's face it, right or wrong, it comes back to the numbers. You've just highlighted there that there's a strong repeat booking opportunity here. Like if you give that experience to somebody who needs that kind of home, there aren't zillions of them. So, their pool of choice is back to you, I would guess, a lot of the time.
It is. The other great thing is they tell their friends, oh, we know that this was hard for us. And they've networked in their communities and said, Jim, you got to check this out. Beth, can you believe that there's this? And so now we start getting referrals that, somebody rented, had a good experience, and now we have a renter coming in from Michigan because of their friends in Missouri that referred them to us. So, I mean, that's the best. But there needs to be more than us at Carolina Beach and the other 85 properties in America.
Totally, yeah. That's pathetic. Yeah, that's well. Okay, so let's talk a bit about how people can make their homes accessible. So rather than talk generically, let's go into some specifics. So autism, for example, how do you make? To me, it's like, oh my goodness, how on earth would I make my home autism friendly, for want of a better phrase?
And it is a great example of where you don't have to renovate. You can have an existing property. It can be new, but the ideas are things that affect your senses. So we want to look at muted color schemes. We want to look at a blackout curtain, so it can be in a calming environment. No fluorescent lights, because the flickering of the lights can affect the senses. Deadlocks on doors, because some people with autism like to go and explore, and so something like that. Door alarms, so again, a lot of these areas might cost less than 500, but yet you're reaching a population of 6.2 million people that currently do not have vacation options as they need it to be. So those simple things can help a family with a family member with autism.
Yeah, it's interesting how, it comes down to simple things like the blackout blinds. Um, you know, but I'm curious then, how on Airbnb, for example, or other online travel agencies, how is there's not a autism sort of friendly box? So how do they communicate that to?
That's our hope, that through shows like this, and through getting information out. I mean, I get the question a lot about what makes a property accessible.
Mhm.
And you or I cannot identify what's going to make a property accessible for somebody else. I can identify what my needs are, and they may be different than your needs. So for platforms, booking platforms, it's really what filters they have. So again, the more filters, the more customized the family individual that wants to book a property can customize what their needs are. And so we highly encourage the filter of saying this is a certified accessible property, or to have a mix of filters. We happen to have 36 filters on our website, and our filters do include vision accessible, hearing accessible, autism, and intellectual disability, and walker and wheelchair accessible. And we feel that more and more people can benefit from booking platforms that give their people viewing the site options of consideration.
Okay, all right, very, very good. Let's talk now about your own specific circumstance. So in terms of like being accessible for people in wheelchairs or even walkers, for
Mhm.
example, to me that just seems like not having a step up on. But I guess it's a lot more like with the doorways and things like that. Is it more complicated than when you talk about for autism?
Absolutely. I mean, again, when we're looking at mobility, I mean, there are things that booking platforms and individuals can post. It's a lot of times it's that lack of information. So we want to know in the bathroom, is that a step-in shower, which is an accessible shower for somebody in a walker? For me, I need a roll-in shower, so not having that step. Now, I have found ramps that are designed for that step-in shower that give you a ramp into the shower and down. It's not ideal necessarily than a roll-in shower. There's no bump, but
Yeah.
at least this product exists. Walker, it's having a clear path. Same thing for a wheelchair. You want to make sure that your furniture is at least 40 inches, give enough space to wheel around. There 36-inch doors is a door width that I need for my wheelchair. A walker can be supported by a 32-inch door. So again, there are distinctions between that walker and mobility. With walker, we do say that one step, and even today we were looking at a property that had 3 steps, but each step was about 18 inches deep. So a walker could go on that step, and it was a shallow step. So that property, even though it had 3 steps, but because of the way they were designed, made it a very accessible property for a walker. So we
Mhm.
look at that. We look at wheel under sinks. And not everybody needs a wheel under sink. I prefer a wheel under sink, but you can go sideways and give a spit to the side into after you're brushing your teeth.
Yeah.
So there are ways, but fully looking at full accommodations, particularly when you're building a roll under sink is very nice. We look at a microwave placement, and that's not expensive. It's where do you put the microwave that somebody in a wheelchair can access it, not over the stove. That is something that,
Yeah.
and if you're short, that's a tough one.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I'm thinking is you talk about the obvious things that come to mind. It's like steps up into the house instead of a ramp, or like you said, up into the shower being a roll in as opposed to a step up. But then I was thinking doorways, okay, fine. But then like, do I have to reconfigure the kitchen so that, the counter heights, are accessible? And to me, that feels like it's quite a big deal to have to make the home work. But you're saying that all of that's not necessarily needed. It's just rethinking how you kind of position things.
And how you position it in your narrative on your booking platform. For example, a lot of times when I'm being a sous chef in the kitchen, I'll go to the kitchen table, roll under it, put a cutting board in front of me, a bowl to put my discards in, and my job is to, cut up all of the vegetables for dinner that night. So it may not be that roll under, but being creative, where could you prep,
Right.
and help in the kitchen? So you just have to be a little creative and think about, I encourage people all the time, sit in a chair, a kitchen chair, and see where that kitchen chair can go. If you have a friend that uses a wheelchair or a walker, invite them over and see what access you may have. So there's a lot of creative ways to look at that. And for some people, they may look at what the basketball brackets are, because basketball is really important to their everyday life, right? They love their sports. And for some people, disability is a way of life for me. So I'm in that mindset of what is accessible. A lot of people aren't in that mindset and they don't think about those things. And that's what we are here to do, is we want to put that information forward.
Great idea, just to get somebody who is in a chair to come and orient themselves around your house, or even, as you said, like simply sit in a chair. Can you get underneath something? Can you work? I think that's great. And we often talk about walking in the shoes of your guests. So that should equally apply to sitting in a chair and figuring
Exactly.
out how, I think that's a great point. You're making me think now about, like, there's a checklist of things that I might need to do. So do you have that kind of resource on the website that enables people to know kind of the sort of things that they would need to do to make it accessible?
Yes, we do. If they go to becomingrentable.com, we not only have the list, but we show you a picture. Like, for example, I love to say zero threshold entry. What the heck does that mean? Well, here it is. This is what it looks like, and this is what it means. And we're adding a component, and this is the range of cost. And so, but people can go on our list right now and they can see it. They can have a definition of it and look at what these different areas of access mean and include.
And ultimately, I guess they can list on your website as well. I mean,
Yeah,
what
you're really good at this.
um, but what does that entail? Like, do they have to prove themselves that they've gone?
So what a lot of times we ask for the URL. Where is it? Where is it being posted? They will click on the various features that they identify to be accessible. We then have a 3-person evaluation. So one person goes in and looks at that information and goes, yeah, that's it. A second person puts it into our database of publishing, and our third person does that third look through to make sure that, yes, indeed, all of these things are true. We notify the family or individual who said, list my property, and we say listed. And it's a free service, and it's just another way of getting your property out there for the target audience of that we're reaching, of people with disabilities.
So it's a free service. Is that just like is that kind of a lead in to getting more accessible properties on the website, or do you
Well, I'm happy
monetize in
to.
a different way?
Right. We're closing in on 600 properties. We have over
Wow,
500 properties right now. And so by another week or so, we'll have 600 properties here in the United States,
that's
which I'm
amazing.
happy to say we're the largest listing platform of having that many accessible properties. But it's a very simple process, and it is free of charge. Our goal is really to make it easier for families who need properties that are accessible to find. It's a very laborious process right now. In fact, it's easy to give up and just say, fine, we're not going on vacation. It can be depressing, frustrating, and we don't want that. We want to be that source that people can go to for information and access.
Yeah, it's a hard old game as a a perfectly able renter to go and find a place. But I can't imagine when you start somewhere on a big listing site going, oh my goodness, like how do I find the place I want? And I can imagine it's deeply, deeply frustrating. So 600 properties, when you said truly there are, you know, only a handful today. And the best thing as well is that if I come to your website looking for an accessible property, I know that I'm genuinely going to find the kind of accessible property for me because of you.
Right. Well, and and that we take great pride in the amount of work that we've done with 14 volunteers in our first 13 months now. But it is that there were so few properties, and again, it is, you have to validate. This is all self validated, our information that's being posted. And so we go in, and a lot of these properties haven't been identified as accessible properties until we've looked at them. And it's like, you have all the components that make a walker friendly or a wheelchair friendly and an autism friendly property. We recently have 28 hearing accessible properties, which I'm so excited about, that we are starting to see a change of how companies are recognizing their properties. And so to have 28 hearing accessible properties is exciting.
So I was going to ask you about hearing accessible. So what, like, educate me, like what does how does that property behave differently to another one to make it hearing accessible?
And things that people may have, closed captioning on their smart TV. Probably a lot of properties have that. Getting a vibration alarm system, and it's a device that goes either under the mattress or the pillow, so that when the doorbell rings, the alarm clock goes off, it vibrates to wake that alert that person sleeping who can't hear it. A signaling device in the property with lights. Again, very affordable. You don't even have to have wired. It can be battery operated. So again, less than $500, and now your property, without any physical modifications, is now hearing accessible for yet another great audience.
Amazing, amazing. There is another category that I wanted to ask you about, and that's how you make your home accessible for blind people. This one, to me, fries my brain, like how you make that happen. It just must be so hard, because there are so many, I think of dangers in the home. There must be so many of them.
Again, it's thinking about, it's actually not under counter lighting. How many properties, again, you can retrofit your kitchen with under counter lighting that's on batteries, but that's an easy one. That clear walking path, so somebody that is blind and has a cane can navigate through the house. Now, something fun we're doing in a model project that we're working on is we are creating a map of the house in different textures. So here we'll show the kitchen in fuzziness, maybe the bathroom on a smooth surface, so somebody can feel this 8x10 map of the house to get an idea of where things are. Fluorescent tape, if you have steps going in or out of the house, for somebody that has vision problems, could see that reflective tape and know that they're transitioning to another step. So things like that are ways to make a property that is for the visually impaired and blind.
What I love about all of these answers that you give is that in my ignorance, I think it's more complicated than it is, and you've articulated some really, really simple ways that you can make homes accessible. And to me, if I've got a home and I've got a big demographic that doesn't have places they can stay, it is an economic decision as well. Like, I can actually probably make a little bit more money and get cheaper bookings because people are talking about those to their friends and saying what a great place this is for people with, an accessibility for walkers or whatever. And so that to me feels like you could hop onto Rentable. You could have a look at some of the simple things that you could do, and you could very quickly make a difference. And like, talking about make a difference, I know when we spoke last week, though, you had some really great stories about the differences this has made to people's lives. Do you feel like you could share one or two of those with us now?
I love my stories. I mean, I have a ton of stories. Well, two of my favorite, I have lots of favorite stories. Okay, two that come to mind. I had a family from Canada, and they came for 2 weeks, and I was nervous because their son was nonverbal. And I'm going, okay, I've really not talked to somebody that was nonverbal, couldn't hear, and I'm going, how am I going to communicate with this person? Well, this was maybe 5 years ago. And so I met Harrison. Within hours, we instantly became friends. Within the day, mom and dad were shoot off to go have a date so we could go play. We had wheelchair races up and down the street. We went and had ice cream. We communicate to this day, and it was just the best experience for both of us. And again, the family drove 2.5 days to get to our property, and they hadn't been in a vacation for years. Um,
Wow.
you know, when I designed our second floor apartment, that's our rental, for whatever reason I wanted a large wet room, and I wanted it large enough for a gurney and 3 attendants. I don't know why I had that idea, but I had the idea for somebody in their last stages of life.
Yeah.
And we've had two, and I thought, oh, what an awesome idea. And it is, but emotionally, it can be really hard and rewarding. Last summer, we had a family who had a 19-year-old son, and that he was in hospice, he was in a coma, and they kept, telling him day after day, we're going to the beach in, 10 days, 9 days, 8 days. 2 days before they left, their son woke up, and he was awake when he came to the beach, and his dying wish was to be at the beach. So mom and dad took him and put him in the we have a beach wheelchair. A block away, they went to the beach, and they sat on the beach with their legs spread and holding their son, because he couldn't hold up on his own. And then the water just lapped up on him, and as it did, he would smile each and every time. And it was the greatest gift for the family, for their son. And he went home, and he had a very peaceful passing, but his last wish came true. And part of me, it was very sad, but also what a privilege, and for us to be able to offer that, and that the family had that peace.
I mean, what an amazing story. When we talk about this sector, making memories and providing unforgettable experiences, and oftentimes it's, it is, but it's not on a deep level. And I'm not saying every experience has to be on a deep level, but this is a great example of how, you make such a huge difference to somebody's life, somebody's end of life, which is, it's like to have the privilege, as you called it, of making those last moments, just right. That's something that is, it's both a huge responsibility, but also a massive privilege. And to leave the parents with that memory as well, to be able to fulfill that final wish.
And knowing that his son was happy. I mean, truly happy. I mean,
Yeah.
smiling, not in pain,
Yeah.
and just really very peaceful. Now, the other end of life one that we had, the wife reached out to me and said that the last Bob was at our place for 4 months. And she said it was the best 4 months of his life. He hadn't had that much positive activity. He went fishing. He got to go and just be on the pier, and just really his heart was completely full. And then he went back home, and 2 days later he passed away. But to say what she remembers during his last months was how happy he was.
Yeah. Gosh,
Yeah.
I'm feeling these are these are profound things, really moving things. Lorraine, thank you. Thank you for not only sharing those great stories at the end, but for sharing the really sort of practical things as well that enable people to deliver these kind of, because we spoke, didn't we, about very checklist and how to do this and fluorescent tape and all, but in the end it delivers those things that you've mentioned. So thank you for sharing that.
Oh,
Did I miss anything? Is there anything else that you wanted to say in
actually,
parting?
there is, and you can go to the website and get it. But one of the things that I'm finding about the whole STR community is the fear of, the ADA in America, and the fear that there's going to be a lawsuit, the fear that there's going to be an accident and they'll get sued. You know, there's a lot of fear in moving forward to provide this accessibility. And we have created a document to hopefully eliminate some of the fear and to address what does it mean to be ADA accessible. Now, we personally don't go by ADA, not because we don't have to, but we believe it's outdated. You know, in America, the ADA says that your doors have to be 32 inches wide, and we believe they need to be 36 inches wide. 30 years ago, our wheelchairs were smaller. My chair, I can go through a 32-inch door, and you know that I went through that 32-inch door because I leave tracks. You know, oh, yep, Lorraine was here. And so if you don't want me to leave tracks in your doorway, 36, yeah, right. But I'm finding that more and more that there is this unknown element of what it means to be accessible from beyond the wheelchair, but also from the legality of it. And so we're addressing that, and we have information about the ADA on our website.
Okay, terrific, great, thank you. What are you aiming for? Are you aiming for 1,000 properties? Like, where's the?
You know, I would have to say I'm aiming to be out of business. That, you know, in 10 or 15 years, this is a way of life.
Yes.
You know what, and that our job is done, and we're on to the next entrepreneurial activity. But you know, we really want to change the landscape. We want in the STR community. We want to have people look beyond wheelchair access and see more and broaden that scope of what it means, and realize that they're very achievable goals that can help millions of Americans and billions of people worldwide.
Yeah, that's a great final parting message. I sense, not only because I've spoken to you a couple of times now, but also today what you're saying, it's very much a partnership. Like you're essentially here to help everybody, you know, kind of level up a little bit in the way they think about accessibility. And so, I mean, like, amazing to have someone with your experience have that, you know, that kind of approach. Like, somebody can come to your website and they can genuinely find what it really means to have an accessible home. And like we've said, how easy it can be as well. It's not all difficult.
Right.
Yeah. Lorraine, thank you. I've loved the discussion. I really appreciate your time and your stories and your practical advice. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.